Hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome to Samvāda Dialogue for Impact by Indie Village Foundation. It's really nice to revive our dialogue series. We founded this in July 2019, back when not a lot of these events used to happen. And we were very consciously a physical space because we wanted two very clear outcomes from this engagement. One was for development sector practitioners, thinkers, academicians, people who wear various hats to come together and have an exchange of knowledge and resources. And the other was for us to have FaceTime so that more and more partnerships and collaborations could come out of this, right? We didn't know we were going to, right, through a pandemic, we were going to pause, rethink. So we did rethink a lot about whether we wanted to contribute to the traffic in the webinar space already, and is that what we wanted to do? But what our realization from that was we wanted to continue to be a space that brings different people together, that brings all the lovely people that we've encountered through our networks, our personal networks, and the work that we do, and see where these synergies can be capitalized on and continue to grow as an organization with the right kind of guidance from other people in the industry, like we have our speakers today. So thank you everyone for joining us. By now we are all aware of Zoom etiquette. Do keep your mics on mute, but continue to keep your fingers very active so you can engage with us on the chat box. The moderator and the speakers will take your questions at some point, maybe in the discussion or towards the end. We'll be taking some questions offline if we cannot accommodate that during the discussion. I want to thank our speakers for making time to come today. This is a really pertinent topic. And one of the reasons Samvāda was revived is, as a rural development organization, Indie Village Foundation wants to enable more discussion between rural sector organizations as well, which can be a very lonely journey. And henceforth, our topics will be more around thematic areas, which are core focuses of our organization. And we will have people like you share your perspective, your experiences, so that we can learn from you and we can figure out where we fit in the development space without reinventing the wheel, as we all like to say. So thank you again for all panelists to make time. Akansha, over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Shreya. I am Akansha Sharma and I lead the gender vertical at Indie Village Foundation. It's an absolute honor to be moderating this brilliant panel of seasoned practitioners who feel so strongly about the people they work with. A little about the gender vertical at Indie Village Foundation. At Indie Village, we recognize the need for special incentives and measures to bring women and other genders on an equal footing. We actively work on bringing in and retaining more women into the formal workforce by providing first-generation income earner women with professional mentorship. We also organize gender reflection circles where we try to create safe space for working women by encouraging them to reflect on the interplay of gender dynamics in their everyday lives. At the gender vertical, we don't just design gender-sensitive and inclusive social impact interventions, but also as thought leaders, strongly advocate for gender equality and empowerment. Our event today promises to be a lively discussion where we will learn and unlearn how we conceptualize and think about gender equality and empowerment. We encourage you to type your questions, like Shreya said, in the chat box, and we will take them towards the end of the panel discussion. So please do communicate with us through this space about the topic. Today, we are discussing the government's proposed bill to increase the age of marriage for girls from 18 to 21. A task force headed by Jaya Jetli was set up by the Ministry of Women and Child Development to examine matters of motherhood, maternal mortality rate, and improvement of nutrition. The task force recommended that a change in the minimum age of marriage would help empower women and lead to gender equality. But the question here is, are we just looking at the tip of the iceberg? And that's what we will be addressing today. And at this point, I would like to introduce our speakers to you. We have Divya Mukund, Senior Officer for Asia from Girls Not Brides, She has 18 years of experience of working at the local, national, and international level with grassroots groups and international organizations. She has worked and led large-scale projects on the themes of livelihoods and gender, child rights, and youth development. Partnership strengthening and coalition building is her strong suit. She has a master's in development studies from the London School of Economics. We have Rama Shyam, Director, Adolescent and Youth Program from Society, Nutrition and Health Action, SNEHA. She is an ethnographer by training and has over 20 years of experience in both grassroots and international organizations. Rama regularly contributes to advocating integrated adolescent programming based on a gender transformative approach across national and global platforms. We have Chandana Bhattacharya, who's the founder of Ekakanya, a demographer by profession. Dr. Chandana has worked extensively in the field of research and development. She has worked as a project manager in International Center for Research on Women between 2003 and 2005, and works collaboratively with the grassroots level partner to implement simple and sustainable monitoring and evaluation approaches for adolescent reproductive and sexual health projects. We have Tanvi Jha, who is a state coordinator from International Center for Research on Women. She has over 17 years of experience on child rights issues and has strong research and writing experience, has been part of several interventions focused on child rights in Jharkhand. She has previously worked as state coordinator for International Labour Organization and was placed at Jharkhand State Labour Department. She played the lead role in drafting the state action plan for elimination of child labor. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are deeply grateful for your presence. I would just like to start off with giving a little context and background to our audience today. So the proposal to change the age of marriage has met with 3 distinct responses. The move has been hailed by one group as a landmark decision. This group strongly believes that equality comes from equal laws and objective equality is the need of the hour. They feel that no law can justify the difference in the age of marriage between men and women. The other group is vehemently opposed to the idea of changing the age of marriage, as they feel that a law on its own can't and won't bring about gender equality and empowerment. The law might end up being coercive and affect the most marginalized by criminalizing them. The third group feels that a holistic systemic approach is the prerequisite to attaining gender equality and empowerment, but they strongly feel that this approach needs to be supplemented by equal laws. Currently, the bill is with the parliamentary committee and the final report is awaited by March end. Divya, I would like to start with you. In our conversation, you walked us through the series of events and discussions that took place across some civil society organizations and activists in the immediate aftermath of this announcement. Would you like to share the series and the timeline of events that happened post the announcement of this proposal?
Sure. Thank you so much, Akanksha and Indie Village Foundation, for inviting me here. And just wanted to add that I'm also here representing the Young Voices National Movement, which is a group of 96 civil society organizations that had worked together to facilitate young people's responses to this proposed amendment when it first came out in 2020, and to submit recommendations to the task force. So just to share a very brief chronology of the kind of over the last 2 years, what's been happening is that as we all know, as you shared, Akanksha, that in 2020 this task force was set up, and it also happened to coincide with the time when the first lockdown had come into place. So physical movement was very restricted. Physical meetings were not possible, and this was really like just it came out in the papers. And at the time, there was a group of about 60 civil society organizations that came together via a Zoom call to say that, look, the government has sort of proposed this. It almost seems as if it's going to happen. There's where is the space for discussion and deliberation, and how can we sort of put in our experiences from the ground, by which we believe that such a law will not only, one, as you mentioned, not really make a great difference in the lives of girls from the poorest communities living in rural areas of India who are the most impacted by child early and forced marriage, but also that it will actually work to harm them in terms of impacting their right to choice and exercising their sexuality. Because as we all know already, the law is actually ending up criminalizing young people when they are choosing partners rather than, when their parents are arranging marriages, then the law doesn't really come into action. So as a result, this group of 60 CSOs very quickly put together a manifesto, which was also submitted to the task force. And in that very meeting, there was a whole discussion around the fact that this law is actually going to impact young people of our country. And what is it that young people are saying? The government is saying we are doing this for girls, it's for gender equality. But what is it that young people feel about this? And as a result, over a period of 2 months, very quickly, we worked together and as I said, these 96 civil society organizations from 15 states of India came together. We don't have any kind of formal registration, but it's a group of organizations that came together and facilitated responses of 2,500 young people in the age group of 15 to 25 years. And we put together a report, which we submitted to Jaya Jetli ji. It's called the Young Voices National Report, and I can share the link in the chat box. And we also supported 4 girl representatives from North, South, East, West India to actually depose before the task force to share why such a move would actually be counterproductive to their agency. Post that, for the longest period, and after that in August, the Prime Minister announced that, this move is going to happen. Even before, there was no report, there were no recommendations, nobody could really make out what had happened. And till date, we don't have access to the report of that committee. And then again, there was like a long period of limbo. And then in the last winter session of Parliament, again, it was announced the cabinet has approved this amendment. And at the time, actually, there was a lot of hue and cry. The Young Voices National Movement, as well as a lot of civil society organizations, did raise their voice against this. There was a lot of media coverage. Post that, now the government has sort of set up a parliamentary committee to again look at and to review this proposed amendment. Of course, again, there were very little, there was just a very small sort of space where we got to know through one newspaper in Kannada, actually, that, there was a certain time period, a 2-week time period in the end of January this year, to submit recommendations from stakeholders to the government, to this task force, to this parliamentary committee in Hindi and English. So again, as a Young Voices National Movement, we made a submission stating why we oppose this move, along with all the relevant documents, including a letter from girl citizens of the country to the chairperson, Mr. Vinay P. Sahasrabuddhe, and other MPs, stating why such a move is actually very sort of facile. It doesn't really make any real difference in their lives, and how they actually placed forward alternatives as to what will be needed to make them delay their age of marriage. And those are really very real options in terms of access to quality, safe education, access to healthcare facilities, access to safe and decent employment close to their homes. So they were also very clear in terms of these are the things we require if you really want us to delay our age of marriage. Changing the law will either make no difference, or it will harm us more than it will help us. So that, in very short, Akansha, is what's been happening. And we still don't have access to that, to the report from the task force. And we have asked for a meeting with, this parliamentary standing committee, but have still not received any response from them. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Divya. I mean, a lot of us, we were not privy to behind the scenes conversations that have been happening, especially in light of the fact that the report is also not public. So thank you so much for sharing that.